This is 9 News.
Good morning, I'm Lara Vella. The clean-up has begun on Sydney's northern beaches after a freak storm ripped across several suburbs, killing one woman and tearing roofs from homes and apartment blocks. Lauren Tomasi is at Narrabeen for us. Lauren, utter devastation there yesterday.
Oh, it really is, Lara, and the clean-up is going to be absolutely mammoth. To give you a bit of an idea of this damage, this devastation, take a look here. We're outside the Surf Life Saving Club in Narrabeen. There are trees down, power lines down, every which way you look, cars damaged from branches falling into them. And if we take a look over here, you can actually see one of the big 20 or so metre Norfolk pines, which fire crews tell me simply snapped like a toothpick. It is like this right across Narrabeen, through DY. A number of suburbs have really been hit hard by this storm, which locals say hit in a matter of minutes, and then it was blue sky again, a bit of a mini tornado. Many just can't believe what they saw. Here was sadly the scene of a really devastating accident as well. A 68-year-old woman was killed when a tree came crumbling down. She was out for a picnic with her friend. I can tell you this morning that 68-year-old woman was a grandmother, 68-year-old Sue Cobham. She's a local around here, a much-loved local, a big part of the community. She was having Christmas celebrations with her friends when this storm hit. The 71-year-old friend is in a serious but stable condition in hospital today and will have to undergo surgeries for her injuries. And there was a 19-year-old girl who was also seriously injured. She'd been out with her boyfriend. So just the scene of it, a really devastating and tragic accident. You really can't make sense of something like that. The devastation, as I said this morning, is so widespread. You can see trees just down all over the place. As for the scene here, it was surf lifesavers who were first on the scene responding. I want to show you now what they had to say.
My heart goes out to them because you can never train anyone enough for the scenes, for what they saw yesterday and for what they had to do.
Yeah, look, really big clean-up job today. Fire crews, SES, emergency services, they all had in excess of 600 calls for help when this storm has hit. Now the job of cleaning up. We've seen roofs torn off all over the place, multiple apartment blocks that have been really damaged badly, and the power is going to be a really big issue. Right now there are around 26,000 people, homes that are without power. Crews are hoping that they can get that sorted by the end of the day, but a substation has also been really badly impacted, so there's every chance that that is going to take some days. And of course we're in the lead up to Christmas, so it's terrible timing by all means. We spoke to one person who'd had his roof ripped off. He was inside, describes the scene to it. This is Nathan. Take a look.
It was just one big crack and my living room ceiling and roof was gone. And then, I sort of went down, and just outside my unit, that whole roof and ceiling was gone. And wasn't sure to run inside or outside because there was sort of timber falling. And
it's remarkable and very scary for Nathan and all people who were on the northern beaches having to go through this. It's going to be quite a lengthy clean-up. SES now going door to door to those houses that have had the roofs ripped off, putting up tarps and hoping that it doesn't rain, which it is due to come in the next couple of days. So they're hoping to get those jobs cleaned up. And you have to, of course, also remember that Christmas last year on the northern beaches was COVID. The whole area was locked down. So this is 2 Christmases in a row that has been, a really hard time. So a lot of people are really feeling it right now.
Just the worst timing for the community on the northern beaches. Lauren Tomasi at Narrabeen for us. Thank you. Now to the fresh COVID concerns in New South Wales. This is a live shot over a busy testing clinic at Castle Hill, that is in Sydney's northwest. You can see hundreds of cars lining up, winding around the park. The expected wait time is more than 3 hours. More than 144,000 people were tested in the last 24 hours, the huge influx causing many results to be delayed. Another 2,501 cases of COVID-19 were recorded today, with no deaths. Hospitalisations are up slightly to 261, 33 of them in intensive care. Victorian testing clinics, meantime, have been swamped in the lead up to Christmas, with some wait times blowing out to nearly 3 hours there too. Today's Isabella Stashkovsky reports.
There have been huge lines at testing facilities right across Melbourne this morning. Here at Albert Park, the facility reached capacity before it even opened. Staff say they haven't seen it this busy for some time. The spike in demand for tests is linked to community transmission, exposure sites and requirements for interstate travel. The inconsistencies in rules state by state is one factor now causing more Australians to reconsider travel plans. While the number of Omicron cases in Victoria is rising, we're being told the number of people in hospital and ICU is stable. However, Professor Nancy Baxter has told Today on 9 she is concerned.
What we don't want is for, Christmas to be a series of super spreading events that happen in everyone's household and end up infecting people who are really high risk of having severe illness with Omicron.
The state government, however, is insisting there won't be new restrictions or a lockdown. And as demand for tests continue to rise, there are growing calls to open more facilities and extend hours, especially in the lead up to Christmas.
Hundreds of people who attended an Adelaide nightclub will spend Christmas Day in quarantine after a teenager tested positive to COVID and continued partying. Oliver Haig is in Adelaide for us. Ollie, the teenager could now face a huge fine.
Yeah, that's right, Lara. Good morning. Police are investigating if he breached the Emergency Management Act. Now, that could result in a $1,092 fine, but the Police Commissioner said this morning that the case could be taken to court, which could result in a $20,000 fine. But the investigation is still ongoing and that hasn't yet been decided. Now, this was all sparked by a 19-year-old who went out clubbing to the Loverboy nightclub in the city on Friday night. He received a text message saying that he had tested positive to COVID-19, but rather than going home, he continued on partying. Now, this has left around 150 patrons and staff who were at the nightclub at the time in quarantine for a week, which has now wiped out their Christmases. Now, the Loverboy nightclub has put out a statement saying that they've labelled this behaviour as selfish and that they will be seeking justice, while the Chief Public Health Officer of South Australia, Nicholas Spurrier, says there is a lot of reasons why this teenager should have been staying away. There's also been a lot of backlash against this teenager online, a tsunami of backlash, plenty of people singling him out. This teenager has responded saying that he's admitted to the mistake and is truly apologetic. There's also reports that this teenager went to the cricket. SA Health has confirmed that he had not activated his ticket. He is now in 14 days of hotel quarantine. Lara?
All right, Ollie, thank you. Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk is giving the state's health system a $200 million boost to help cope with increasing COVID cases. Infections have been rising since the border opened a week ago, with 34 new local cases recorded yesterday. Health authorities will provide an update on the state's COVID situation this afternoon. Western Australia is a fortress this morning after tightening its travel rules to the rest of the country. Arrivals from Queensland and Tasmania will now be forced into 2 weeks quarantine. Business leaders are calling for an urgent boost in migration levels to bolster the workforce as the nation records its slowest population growth in over a century. Straight to Politics reporter Rachel Baxter in Canberra. Rachel, what are their concerns?
Good morning, Lara. Well, business leaders are warning the nation's economic recovery will stall if we don't speed up the return of international skilled workers. They want the annual permanent migration cap to be lifted from 160,000 to between 190 and 200,000. International border closures and quarantine requirements have made it difficult for businesses and industries to access skilled overseas workers, resulting in crippling workforce shortages. Australian Industry Group Chief Executive Ines Willox has written to the Home Affairs Department urging the government to consider lifting the caps in the March budget.
We're about 1.5 million people down on where we would normally be by the end of this decade as a result of COVID, but business is feeling that pinch now. Everything from agricultural workers to bar staff to construction engineers to high-tech skills. They've all gone missing.
Migration is obviously crucially important to our economy, but it can't be an excuse not to train more Australians for more opportunities.
And Lara, the true impact of Australia's international border closures has been revealed this morning. The government releasing its annual population statement. Australia has recorded its slowest population growth in more than 100 years, and it's forecast to remain low at just 0.3% into 2022. The size of the population is expected to be around 1.5 million people smaller over the next decade compared to pre-pandemic forecasts. Around 40% of this difference is attributable directly to lower overseas migration. In fact, the national lockout has led to the first net overseas migration loss from Australia since just after the Second World War. Lara.
OK, Rachel, thank you. Thousands of protesters have marched through the streets of Belgium, where COVID-19 restrictions have been reintroduced. Demonstrators were seen throwing objects at police in Brussels. 13 were arrested. The Netherlands is now back in lockdown to curb the spread of Omicron. Meanwhile, Germany has banned travellers from Britain to keep case numbers down. The British Prime Minister is accused of flouting his own COVID-19 rules. A picture published in The Guardian shows Boris Johnson, his wife and more than a dozen staff members in the No. 10 Downing Street garden during the lockdown in May last year. Mr Johnson's office insists it was a staff meeting, not a social gathering. Specialist teams brought in as investigations into Tasmania's Jumping Castle tragedy intensify. The major clean-up after a super typhoon wreaks havoc across the Philippines. Plus, the unique call being used to find critically endangered frogs.